This is a true story my cousin in New Jersey swore to me, and later I found a thread on a retail worker forum that described the same laugh, the same window. I was staying with her for a week. She worked the late shift at a vintage clothing store on the boardwalk, the kind with wood floors and glassy mannequins. She asked me to help close, count the till, wipe the fingerprints from the window. Simple, boring, safe. The mannequin in the front wore a red 1960s dress, a pearl choker, and a grin that was almost kind. Almost. My cousin said the jaw used to be neutral, then one morning it looked slightly upturned. We blamed heat warping. We laughed. On Wednesday, rain hammered the awning. The boardwalk was empty. The store hummed like a shell against my ear. We killed the music, counted bills, the register clicked, the coin tray smelled like copper and gum. I wiped the display glass. My breath fogged a small oval. Behind the fog, the mannequin's pupils seemed deeper, wet, watchful. I told myself it's just glare from the street lamp, a distorted reflection, a tired brain. The first laugh came soft, not a ha-ha, more a small breath through teeth like fabric tearing politely. It came from the window, from the red dress, from a mouth that should not open. I snapped my head. The mouth was closed, but the smile had climbed a millimeter. You know the way a cat's eye seems to move when you blink. My cousin whispered that we should just finish. Don't feed it. Don't look at it. That's what the forum post said. I asked what forum. She said a night manager's sub, full of mannequins, elevators, mirrors, all the things that hold a shape too long. The second laugh rode the air vent. It skittered along the ceiling grate, dropped above our heads like a bead of cold rain. We froze, we listened. The dress rustled though no air moved. The pearls clicked one to another, tiny bones greeting. I took my phone, opened voice memo. The red dot blinked, my thumb shook. My reflection in the glass looked braver than I felt. In the reflection, the mannequin stood closer to the glass, just a hand's breadth, fingers not touching, fingers almost curious. I spun around. The mannequin's platform hadn't budged. Dust around the base was unbroken, the tape marks still lined up. The third laugh came right at my ear, a low hey that didn't rise. It smiled inside my head, a slice of cold citrus behind my eyes. My cousin whispered, "There's a box in the back room, a wooden hat box, and donation without a name." That's when it started. We fetched the box. It smelled like talc and attic sun. Inside lay a vintage wig, a pearl clasp, and a photo trimmed to fit. The photo showed a woman in the same red dress on a boardwalk, 1963, the same awning stripes, the same shop sign, the same pose. But her smile in the photo was straight, serious, almost stern, like she was bracing for a joke she wouldn't like. We put the hat box on the counter. The laugh came again, louder, like a throat warming up, like someone finding the right key. The pearls around the mannequin's neck were not from our inventory. The clasp matched the one in the box. The metal nick on the side was identical. My cousin said the previous manager found the box on the step with no note, accepted it, dressed the mannequin for a summer theme. That week, the window kept fogging from the inside, not outside, not us, the glass weeping inward. I touched the glass, cold bit my fingertip, a smile shape cleared where my skin met the fog, the glass grinned at me. I told the mannequin we were returning her things. I said it quieter than prayer, louder than thinking. We unclasped the pearls, lifted the wig, placed them back in the hat box. The hair felt warm, someone else's shower warmth. The laugh thinned, stretched, became a breath through a straw, then a whistle stuck under a door. In the reflection, the mannequin's mouth flattened, the grin settling back like a tide, not gone, but receding to where it belonged. We taped the photo to the lid, wrote, "Return to sender," though there was no sender, just the night, just the boardwalk. When we carried the hat box to the rear exit, the wind outside stalled, the awning stilled, the rain hit differently, slower like a metronome switching tempos. We set the hat box outside the loading door, closed the latch, counted to 10 like kids who fear what they believe. The laugh didn't return, but a faint rhythm tapped the glass. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, like pearls politely knocking. At dawn, my cousin texted me a photo. The hat box was gone, the window stayed clear, the smile on the mannequin never climbed again. For weeks, the store felt aired out. The floorboards stopped groaning at odd hours. The register drawer glided instead of catching. But sometimes, on humid nights, a tiny fog oval blooms at the height of a mouth, as if the glass remembers how to breathe. I still have the audio. In the background, you can hear a laugh shaped like a smile, short, tidy, practiced. If you listen with headphones, you'll hear where it steps closer, not in footsteps, but in the way the room shrinks, a coat 2 sizes too small. This is a true account from my friend in Manchester, and I later found a long comment chain where people described the same mirror, the same breath on the back of their tongue. He rented a room in a Victorian terrace, ceilings too high, stairs too narrow, wallpaper like pressed flowers under skin. The landlord left a gilt mirror on the landing, oval, foxed with silver, cloudy at the edges like milk in tea. First week, the mirror sighed when someone passed, not wind, not plumbing, an exhale timed to your step. I stayed over on a weekend, we worked late, made noodles, argued about music, normal, stubborn, safe. At 2 a.m., I climbed the stairs to the bathroom. The house held its breath, the mirror waited at shoulder height. I avoided my face like you do in hotel windows, but peripheral vision is a traitor. It feeds you what you fear. Inside the oval, my reflection leaned in a fraction, my lips remained still, but the mirror version tilted a thought forward. A whisper licked my left ear, not words, a shape of words, like a sentence pressed into clay, then pulled out. I whispered back without meaning to. I asked, "What do you want?" I asked like I was late to a conversation I should have joined years ago. The mirror clouded from the inside, soft white breathing, then a dry finger drew the letter H, then another, a line that didn't pick a letter. My friend stepped onto the landing. The whisper hid. The steam erased the marks. The silver freckles watched like old stars. He said tenants complained. The mirror told them how they'd look when old, but that wasn't what scared them. The scary part was it guessed what you regret. We laughed like idiots. We said goodnight. We pretended to be new people. At 4, I woke to the sound of paper being folded slowly, corners aligning in the dark, breath counting creases. I opened the door. The landing was colder by 10 years. The mirror held a winter light, the oval of a pond you'd fall through. In the glass, I saw my mouth say a name I never say out loud, a name I keep under floorboards, a proper noun with a lock. The mirror whispered that I could have kept the promise, that choices harden like sugar if you stop stirring, that I left the spoon standing. I told the mirror to say it plain. It said no. It said, "We only shape what you already know. We only point with your own finger." My friend arrived with a towel. He said they found a letter years ago wedged behind the frame, written in pencil, pressed deep, the H carved through fibers. A woman once owned the house. She waited for someone who never returned from the canal. The letter started with H and ended in blank water. We lifted the mirror. The wall behind was stained in an oval, like a long-worn locket mark on a throat. He said we could turn it to face the wall. Tenants do that. It doesn't help. The whisper just leans through the plaster. I carried it down to the kitchen, set it against a chair. The mirror showed ceiling beams like ribs, a throat cut of shadow. We made tea. We watched our steam become fog on the glass. We waited for letters. We begged for silence. The whisper asked me to breathe in and hold, to count to 7, to give it a space where a word could grow. I held my breath. I thought of the name. I thought of a bridge and a phone I should have answered, the glass frosted in a heartbeat. On the frost, a sentence formed, not carved, condensed by something that knew how my lungs would fail. Help me finish. I wrote with my fingertip, how? The chill skinned my print. The mirror hummed like a struck coin. The answer came as a scene, me on a train to somewhere I swore I'd never go again, me arriving before the shop shutters open, me leaving flowers with a note that admits what I owe. I said, "Mirrors don't get to assign chores," it replied with the shape of laughter with no sound, a muscle moving under a sheet. At dawn, we carried the mirror into the yard. Morning pooled blue in the oval. Birdsong broke into pieces, crossing the glass. We covered it with a blanket. The whisper faded to moth wing. My chest loosened. Morning took a breath the house could share. He left the mirror behind. The landlord said it belongs to the house now, like a stair that remembers ankles. Sometimes I dream of that oval. I wake with a word on my tongue, a name that tastes like missed trains and wet stone. I do the chore the mirror asked, one small act at a time. The whispers lessen, but they never stop. They only grow kinder, which is worse. This is my story from a small town in Brittany, and I later saw a French forum where 3 people described the same smile, the same stubborn cold. I rented an attic room for a month. The house had dormer windows like sleepy eyes. The ocean breathed behind the roofs. The landlady was gentle. Her husband was a photograph on the mantel. His grin was wide and winter bright, muscles frozen in a holiday pose. She said he smiled like that in life, always ready for a toast, always halfway to laughter, always a degree too bright. In the kitchen, the fridge groaned like an old dog. The tiles held last century's cold in their grout. The kettle clicked like teeth. I noticed frost on the picture frame each morning, not on the window, not on the glassware, only the frame around the husband's grin. At night, a draft tugged the corners of the room. It threaded itself into my sleeves. It plucked the hair at my wrist. On the 4th night, the smile in the photo gleamed wetter. The teeth had shine, as if polished by breath that belonged to the frame. I warmed my hands over the radiator. The pipes clanged like iron cutlery falling through walls. The frost thickened around the photo like lace. The landlady said the smile began the winter after he fell from the pier, a slip they called it, a rumor others whispered, an unfinished argument with the sea. She said sometimes she woke with a ring of cold around her mouth, like she had worn his grin in her sleep and forgotten to take it off. I offered to move the photo. She said it follows the cold, that it likes thresholds, doorways, rooms that don't know if they're public. That night I placed a candle by the mantel. The flame bent toward the photograph. It licked the varnish without touching. It made the smile look like a blade. At 2 a.m., the kitchen thermometer blinked down to 3 degrees. The kettle puffed a ghost. The frost crawled from the frame onto the glass, tracing the lips. On the frost, the grin widened, crystals stacked like teeth. The top incisor chipped into a tiny star, matching the chip in the printed tooth beneath. I whispered to the husband that the sea kept the rest of him, that a smile is not enough to haunt with, that he needed a reason. The fridge thumped. The door seal whispered. Inside, the light flickered and refused to settle, like a lighthouse deciding who to save. The landlady stepped in wearing a cardigan like a stitched fog. She didn't shiver. She'd learned the temperature of grief. She said the pier rumor had a shape, a woman in town who used to visit at dusk, a debt in the shadow of the fish market. She said the smile froze the week she forgave him for the rumor, but the cold remained when the forgiveness didn't stick. We decided to take the photo to the pier, to let the wind choose, to ask the tide that ended his takuing. We wrapped the frame in an old scarf. The frost formed inside the scarf, a glittering mouth we carried between us. Down at the pier, the boards were slick with salt. The rail smelled of coins and rope. Gulls drew punctuation in the sky. We set the frame against a bollard. The ocean eyed us like a lender, patient, certain, amused. I told the husband we brought his smile to where it began. I said the grin was heavy. We were tired. The debt needs a bookend. The wind pressed the scarf. The frost sketched fast. A sentence along the lip line, shallow letters that said, "I know." The landlady answered aloud, "I know too, not angry, not sweet, a balance written in cold." The frost on the glass melted from the center out, a mouth unlearning a habit. The smile in the photo softened by a degree you feel, not see. We carried the frame home. The kitchen warmed by 2 numbers on the thermometer. The kettle's breath turned human again. That night, the draft failed to find my sleeves. The hair at my wrist lay down like grass after rain. The next morning, only a halo of dew rimmed the frame. No sharp crystals, no blade, just water deciding to be ordinary. Sometimes the smile creeps back on a harsh wind, but it never reaches the old width. The grin keeps a secret soft spot now. I still taste cold when I say his name, but it no longer coats my teeth. It no longer makes promises I can't keep. Which moment chilled you the most tonight? The pearls that clicked like tiny bones, the mirror that finished a word with your breath, or the smile that learned to soften? Have you ever heard a room laugh, or felt a mirror lean toward your tongue, or seen a photograph change the weather in a house? Tell me what you would have done differently. Return the hat box, break the mirror, throw the frame into the sea, or listen until it told the truth. Comment the exact second that hooked you so I can map where your fear begins and where the story steps into your room. If these true night stories followed you into the dark, subscribe so you don't walk back alone. I bring a light, small, steady, stubborn. Share this with someone who keeps a smile too long, or with the friend who still turns mirrors to the wall at night. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week where the boardwalk fogs, where the house whispers, where the tide forgets to warm your hands.